أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. Lesson number 94. Surah Al-Araf, ayah number 138 to 154. وَجَاوَزْنَا بِبَنِي إِسْرَائِيلَ الْبَحْرَ. And we took the children of Israel across the sea. When the Bani Israel left Egypt and Fir'aun followed them, they crossed the sea. When they crossed the sea, they crossed it successfully. And Fir'aun and his people, his army, those who followed them, they drowned in the sea. Over here Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentions Jawazna. Jawazna is from the root letters Jim, Waw, Zay. Jim, Waw, Zay, from the word Jaws. And Jaws is to pass. What does it mean? To pass. Basically, Jaws is the wasat, the mid part of something. Jawzul tariq is half of the road, halfway through. So Jaws is the halfway through something, the half of something, the wasat, the mid part of something. So jawaza is to go past the half. Do you understand? Jawaza is literally to go past the half. When you have crossed halfway, then the distance that is left is very short. Isn't it? And you know that, then you start counting down. Isn't it? For example, if you're going somewhere and you know that it's going to take you 1 hour to go there, you're just waiting for that half-hour mark. And after the half hour, like, okay, there's only half an hour left. Only 20 minutes left. So, jawazna, we made them cross. We made them cross. Who? Bi Bani Israel, the Bani Israel. And jawaza bi, when the word jawaza is followed by bi, it gives a sense of to make someone cross, to take them across. From the same root letters, Jim, Waw, Zay, is the word jawazus safar. And what is that? Passport. Because only when you have that, then you can cross what? The border. So, وَجَاوَزْنَا بِبَنِي إِسْرَائِيل, under the leadership of Musa a.s. from Egypt, they crossed the sea, and they crossed the sea into what? Into the Sinai Peninsula. Al-Bahr. Which Bahr was this? Which Bahr was this? The Red Sea. فَأَتَوْا عَلَىٰ قَوْمٍ. So they came upon a nation. Which nation? Or what were they doing? It is said that this was the nation of Canaanites. And these people, they were يَعْكُفُونَ. They were devoted. عَلَىٰ أَصْنَامٍ لَهُمْ, upon idols that they had. So these people, they were devoted, worshipping their idols. Before their idols, they had devoted themselves. And this scene, this was very impressive. And the Bani Israel actually got very impressed by this scene, when these people were devoted to their idols. Ya'kufuna is from the root letters Ain, Kaf, Fa. And Ukuf, Akifa, is to remain in a place. It is to pay attention to something out of ta'zeem, out of great respect and reverence, and to stay devoted to it, to not leave it. Like, for example, if a person is doing i'tikaf, what does he do? He stays in the masjid, and he doesn't stay there to have fun, but he stays there to worship Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And he doesn't leave the masjid for every little thing. Isn't it so? He doesn't even leave the masjid for anything at all, rather. So, يَعْكُفُونَ, they were devoted, they were giving so much attention, they were showing so much humility, they had devoted themselves to أَصْنَامٍ لَهُمْ. Asnam is the plural of sanam. And sanam is from the root letter Sad, Noon, Mim. And the word sanam applies to idols or sculptures that are made of wood, stone, or some type of metal. What is it made of? Wood, stone, or some type of metal, for instance, gold or silver or something like that. And a sanam can be a sculpture of something that is imaginary or something that is real. Do you understand? Like, for example, it could be of an animal, it could be of a person, or it could be of something that is completely imaginary. You don't see that live. For example, something that appears to be a person, but it has multiple arms, or multiple legs, or multiple heads. Or, for example, something that appears to be half of an animal and half of a human being, or half of one type of animal, half of another type of animal. Similarly, people have made sculptures or images of angels. Have they seen angels? No. For example, an image of a person with wings. How do you know that this is how angels are? Yes, angels have wings, but how do you know that that is the type of wings they have? We don't know. We've never seen the angels. Only the Prophet ﷺ was shown angel Jibreel, and perhaps other prophets were also shown, Allahu A'lam. But ordinary people have not seen angels. So how can they describe an angel that it has such wings? So, sanam could be of something that is real or something that is completely imaginary. Something that is completely imaginary. And a sanam is made specifically for the purpose of worship. Not for decoration, but what is it made for? Worship. So you understand? It's made for the purpose of ibadah. So every sculpture is not a sanam. Do you understand? But every idol is a sanam. Okay? So these people, they had these asnam, and they were worshipping them with a lot of devotion, with a lot of humility, and constantly, uninterruptedly, they were worshipping these idols of theirs. Qalu, they said. Who said? The Bani Israel. Upon seeing these people, they said, Ya Musa, O Musa alayhi salam, ij'al lana ilahan. You also make for us a god. Kama lahum aliha. Just like they have so many gods. Look at their idols. They look so beautiful. Look at them. And look how they have something physical before them, and they're worshipping those idols with so much dedication. They can see the idol. It perhaps increases them in their concentration, in their focus. They have so many gods. O Musa, why don't you also make for us just one idol? They believed in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And they believed in His oneness. It's not that they're saying, make us another God. But what they're saying is, make a physical form, an idol, a sculpture, a figure of God, so that we can worship that as well. Just as these people are worshipping. Qala, he said. Meaning Musa alayhi salam replied, Innakum qawmun tajhalun. You are a people who are ignorant. You are behaving ignorantly. What is jahl? Ignorance, when a person does not have any knowledge. Jahl is also having incorrect knowledge, when a person is unacquainted with reality. He has incorrect knowledge about something. And jahl is also to ignore, to act on the knowledge that a person has. It could be because of lack of comprehension. It could be because of forgetfulness. It could be because of being overcome by some emotion. So he said, Innakum qawmun tajhalun, you are an ignorant people. What was their ignorance over here? Did they not know that Allah is one and that they should not worship idols? Their ignorance was that they were not using their mind. They were acting very immature. How? That they were imitating others without using their reason, without using their mind. Just because something looked very impressive, they wanted to do the same thing as well. So, innakum qawmun tajhalun, you all are very ignorant. What does it mean? That first of all, you are literally ignorant of the fact that shirk is forbidden, and that making a figure of God is something that is incorrect. Making a sculpture of Allah is something that is incorrect. Idolatry, worshipping idols, is something that is incorrect. You are unaware of this fact. Secondly, innakum qawmun tajhalun, what does it mean? That you are behaving ignorantly. How? That you're imitating others. You want to imitate others without using your mind, without using your reason. Blindly you want to follow them just because what they're doing seems to be so impressive. And thirdly, innakum qawmun tajhalun, you are behaving ignorantly. How? That you are repaying Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's favor to you with something so wrong. That Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has shown so much favor on you, that He alone saved you, and you want to worship idols? This is ignorance. Innakum qawmun tajhalun. Now, as we learned earlier, that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala saved the Bani Israel from the people of Fir'aun and from their oppression. How? By sending Musa alayhi salam to them. Musa alayhi salam and the Bani Israel, they crossed the sea, and Fir'aun and his army, they were drowned before their very eyes. وَأَنْتُمْ تَنْظُرُونَ. Remember? They saw the people of Fir'aun drowning. And they crossed the sea, they traveled a lot, and finally they reached a point where they came across the people who were worshipping idols. As I mentioned to you, it is said that they were the people of Canaan, the Canaanites. And this was the first time that the Bani Israel were ever traveling outside the country. First time ever that they were going overseas. They were going to come across other people, other nations. And when they saw something different, they were very impressed. And if you look at it, the people of Fir'aun also, they were polytheistic. Wasn't it? The Bani Israel did not see idolatry for the first time. They saw it before as well. But the people of Fir'aun used to worship idols, but because they did not like the people of Fir'aun, obviously they did not like anything that they did. Isn't it so? When you hate someone, you hate everything that is about them, that is associated to them. But outside of that, when they saw another people worshipping idols, they got very impressed. And they said to Musa alayhi salam, we also want something like this. What do we learn from this? First of all, we learn that slavery, what does it do to a people? It rusts and decays the intelligence of people, the minds of people. It disables them from using their minds. It makes them completely ignorant and unaware. And this slavery could be physical slavery, that literally a person is a slave of another. And it could also be intellectual slavery, mental slavery. What is intellectual slavery? When a person does not use his own mind. Rather, what is he doing? He is believing everything that others are telling him. He is following everything that other people are telling him. He is not using his own reason. Rather, he is only imitating others. Because if you look at it, when a person is a slave, then he's not able to use his mind. He's not able to use his logic, his free will. Isn't it so? He's hungry, he's sleepy, he wants to go rest, but he's told, no, you have to do this work right now. Can he use his mind? No. He wants to do something a particular way, but the master says, no, you cannot do it this way, you have to do it this way. So what does slavery do? It rusts the mind of a person. It rusts his intelligence. And the same thing happened with the Bani Israel as well. It made them mentally disabled in the sense that they weren't able to use their minds anymore. They weren't able to use their intellect. They were just imitating others in their speech, in their walk, in their talk, in thinking, in everything. They were blindly following others. It wasn't that the Bani Israel did not believe in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. They believed in His oneness. But due to lack of understanding, due to lack of intelligence, due to lack of the sharpness of the mind, they were not able to see that as something that is incorrect. And out of that foolishness, they requested Musa alayhi salam that we also want the same thing. We also want the same thing. It wasn't that they were disbelievers, remember that. They were believers from before. But it was because they had not been using their minds in such a long time. Because of that reason, whatever they saw, they just wanted to follow that as well. And this is something that happens to those people who are intellectually enslaved, as I mentioned to you earlier. Who don't have conscious iman. You see, one is that a person is a believer just because he's a born Muslim. What is he going to do? Everything that his family is going to tell him, whatever the people are going to tell him, we're supposed to do this on Fridays, we're supposed to do this on this particular day, he'll do it. Without knowing why. Isn't it so? And many times such people, when they're questioned, why do you pray? Why do you believe in such and such? When they don't have an answer, what do? They leave their faith. Isn't it so? It happens to so many people. But when a person consciously has iman, his iman is conscious, in the sense that he is willingly a believer, and he knows why he is a believer, he has made that decision himself, then that person, he is not a jahil. He does not behave ignorantly. And we see that many Muslims, what are they doing today? They're imitating others without using their mind. Just because at the time of Christmas, there's Christmas trees everywhere, we will also have a Christmas tree that may be the most expensive thing, the most expensive Christmas tree in this world. Just because everybody has it, we're also going to have it. This is not using your own mind. This is just imitating others without using your reason. And this is a sign of a slave nation. This is a sign of mentally oppressed people, of mentally enslaved people, intellectually enslaved people who don't use their own reason. They're just imitating others. And this is exactly what happened with the Bani Israel. Secondly, we also learn from this ayah that before accepting what other people are saying or what other people are doing, before imitating them, what are we required to do? We must use our mind. We must check if what they're doing is correct or incorrect. Many times we see somebody doing something. For instance, they're wearing a particular dress, or they're talking in a particular way. They're wearing their hijab a certain way, and just because it looks so nice, we want to imitate them as well. Without checking, without thinking, is this the correct way? Is this something that is approved by the Quran and Sunnah? Without using our mind, we blindly follow other people. What do we learn from this ayah? That we must use our mind. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given us an intellect, and we must use it when it comes to practicing the deen, when it comes to accepting anything that is being said to us. And we must check everything in the light of the Quran and Sunnah before accepting it. Thirdly, we also learn from this ayah about the obligation on the leader to guide his people. The obligation on the leader to guide his people. That how should he guide them? How should he correct them? With wisdom. That Musa a.s., he didn't say, you are committing shirk. You have become mushrikeen. This is blasphemy and what you're saying is incorrect. He does not pass a judgment over them. He does not label them. But what does he say? You just don't know. You don't know about it. And he gives them the benefit of doubt. You just don't know. You don't know what you're asking about. You don't realize what you're saying. So the leader must guide and correct his people with what? With wisdom. Generally what happens with us, when we see people around us, if they're doing something wrong, immediately we put a label. So-and-so is a bid'ati, he's doing a bid'ah. So-and-so has become an ash'ari, and so-and-so has become a mu'tazili, and this and that. We put big, big labels that we ourselves don't comprehend. We've just heard those big names. We don't know their details, and we just put those names. Very easily. But when we give other people labels, then what does it do? It develops hate and friction between people. Doesn't it? But when you say, they don't know, then what does it develop in your heart? Well-wishing for them. Compassion in your heart. They don't know. They don't know. It makes you realize it's your duty to tell them. It's your obligation to tell them. But if you think, so-and-so is a mushrik, so-and-so is committing a bid'ah, so-and-so has gone this way or that way, then that develops hate and friction. What should be done is, you should tell yourself, they don't know. And when you realize they don't know, it will develop well-wishing in your heart. It will develop compassion and care in your heart for the other. And then only will you be able to help them. Our problem is that we learn about a few things and then we begin labeling other people. And this is why our work is not effective. Because people, they become averse to us. They don't want to listen to us. Because they know that if they're going to come before us, we're going to say something to them which is going to hurt them. Musa a.s. corrects them. And he says, Inna ha'ula'i, indeed these. Meaning, these people who are engaged in idolatry, who are engaged in idol worship, who are worshipping these idols, what's going to happen to them? It is mutabbarun. It is destroyed. What is destroyed? Ma hum fihi, what they are engaged in. Meaning the deed, the action that they are engaged in, it is mutabbar. It is destroyed. What is it that they were engaged in? What action were they engaged in? Shirk, polytheism, idol worship. So he says, ma hum fihi, this action of theirs is going to be mutabbarun. What does mutabbar mean? Mutabbar is from the root letters ta, ba, ra. Ta, ba, ra. Tatbir is to destroy and demolish something. What does it mean? To destroy and demolish, to break something, to ruin. And mutabbar is literally used for a broken dish. A dish that is broken. So just imagine if you have a plate or if you have a bowl and it's broken. Can you use it for anything? No. If you try to put water into a glass that is cracked, what's going to happen? It's going to leak out. If you put some food into a plate that is heavily cracked or that is chipped from the side, it's possible that it will break even further. If you try to cook in a vessel that is already broken, it's possible that it will break even further. Isn't it so? So mutabbar is that which is broken, that which is destroyed. From the same root, the word tibr is used for small pieces, tiny pieces of gold and silver. It is to break gold and silver into tiny pieces before melting it. Do you understand? Like for example, if there is a brick of gold and it has to be turned into gold jewelry, is that whole thing going to be melted together at once? Perhaps now, but before what did people do? They would cut it into smaller pieces and then they would melt it because it would be easier to melt it. So tatbir is to destroy something. So mutabbar is one that is destroyed, one that is doomed. So this action of shirk of theirs, this amal of shirk, it is mutabbar. Meaning, it is a source of their destruction. Apparently, it seems very impressive, but eventually it is going to destroy these people. وَبَاطِلٌ, and it will be nullified. What is going to be nullified? مَا كَانُوا يَعْمَلُونَ, whatever that they are doing. What is it that they are doing? Idol worship. Meaning it will bring them no benefit. Rather, it will lead them to destruction. This action of theirs is worthless. It's going to bring them loss and no benefit in the hereafter. We learned that Musa a.s., he freed the Bani Israel from Fir'aun's oppression. Why? So that they could worship Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So that they could become free in order to worship Allah. So his mission was to eliminate idolatry and to make worship exclusively for Allah. Because when the Bani Israel were enslaved, they weren't able to worship Allah. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala had chosen the Bani Israel and He had made them leaders. And it was very important that they do not imitate others. Especially when it comes to idolatry. And if the Bani Israel were to follow others in idolatry, then what was the point of their freedom? What was the point? If they were going to do shirk over here, after becoming free, then they might as well have stayed over there. Right? What was the reason? The reason for their freedom from captivity was so that they could worship Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. But if they were not going to worship Allah and they were going to worship idols, then they might as well have stayed in slavery because that is exactly what they were doing before. So, over here Musa a.s. is explaining to them that look, what you're asking for is shirk. And shirk is something that is going to be a source of destruction for a person in the hereafter. What do we learn from this ayah? First of all, we learn from this ayah about the importance of explaining to people the loss, the harm, the negative consequence of what they are demanding. Instead of saying a plain no. Many times, children ask their parents, can I go here? Can I do this? And what's the answer? No. Why? I just said no. Why? I just said no. Simple. No is a no. If you don't tell them, if you don't make them understand why you're not letting them go to the mall for the 5th time in the week, then what's going to happen? What's going to happen? They will rebel. Perhaps they won't tell you. And they will go anyway. So, sometimes we just try to say no, and we want the other person to accept what we have said. But the wise way is that you explain to the other why you have refused their request. Because when you explain to them, then they understand, and then they won't ask for it again. Then they can make that decision themselves as well. Secondly, we also learn from this ayah that any action that is done for other than Allah it will produce no result in the akhirah for a person. It is mutabbar. Shirk. Whether it is minor shirk or major shirk. Whether it is riya, showing off, doing something for other than Allah, doing something just to get the praise of people. Such an action is mutabbar. It will be broken down into pieces in the hereafter. Literally, it will be broken down. Mutabbar. Where do we learn that from? In Surah Al-Furqan, ayah number 23. We learn, وَقَدِمْنَا إِلَى مَا عَمِلُوا مِنْ عَمَلٍ فَجَعَلْنَاهُ هَبَاءً مَنْثُورًا. And we will regard whatever they have done of deeds, and we will make them as dust that is dispersed. Dust that is dispersed. So an action that a person does for other than Allah, even if apparently it is very good, but at the end of the day, it is mutabbar. It will not carry any weight. It will be destroyed. It will not bring any benefit to a person. Thirdly, we also learn from this ayah that a person should avoid all those actions that are useless, which eventually break down into tibr, producing no results. A person should avoid all such actions which are not going to produce any result, which are going to break down and are not going to bring any benefit to him at the end of the day. Because this life that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given to a person is too precious to be wasted in useless things. He says, this is mutabba. Therefore, stay away from it. It's a waste of time. وَبَاطِلٌ. Batil is what they're doing. So what do we learn from this? We should stay away from all such actions which are batil, which are mutabba, which are not going to bring any benefit to a person. So we should eliminate time wasters from our lives. We also learn from this ayah that anything that does not have a correct base, it will eventually fall apart. It will eventually become mutabbar. If an action is done not for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, what's going to happen to it? It's going to be useless. It's going to be void in the hereafter. If you look at it, when these people were worshipping the idols, ya'kufun, they were looking so impressive that the Bani Israel, they saw them, they got so impressed, they wanted an idol as well. Just imagine how impressive their service or their worship must have been. However, because the action is incorrect, no matter how beautiful it may seem, because the base is incorrect, therefore, the entire action will be mutabbar. The base has to be correct. There has to be ikhlas behind everything that a person does. Because if there is no ikhlas, the action is going to break down eventually. If you look at it, if a person does not have ikhlas when he's praying, will he have khushu'? No. Will he get any reward? No. Similarly, if a person is giving sadaqah, and he does not have ikhlas, he's not giving it only for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, what's going to happen? He's going to give, and if he does not get the praise of people, he's not going to bother to give again. He's treating another person nicely, not for the sake of Allah, but so that other people treat him nicely. If they don't treat him nicely, is he going to treat them nicely again? No. Why? Because it's not for the sake of Allah. So what makes actions permanent and everlasting is what? Ikhlas. Ikhlas. And if an action is done without ikhlas, it is mutabbar. It is mutabbar. It is going to be broken down to pieces. It's going to fall apart eventually. It is going to be temporary. It's not going to have a lasting effect. We learn in Surah Al-Kahf, وَالْبَاقِيَاتُ الصَّالِحَاتِ. What is it that endures? What is it that lasts? Good deeds. And what's the condition of a salihah action? Which is done, first of all, with sincerity, only for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. We learn that Imam Malik, when he was writing his book, Al-Muwatta, there were many other people who began writing similar books, and they gave the same name even, in his imitation. You know, when somebody does something good, other people imitate them. Again, they're just imitators. They don't have their own ideas. They're not original. So, Imam Malik was asked, what do you have to say about this? Who's going to know about your book? Because there are so many muwattas out there now. So he said, مَا كَانَ لِلَّهِ بَقِيَ. Whatever is done for the sake of Allah, that will last. That will remain. It will remain in this dunya, and it will also make it to the hereafter. And if something is not done for the sake of Allah, it is very temporary. Very temporary. Musa a.s. tells them over here, this action that they're doing, it is mutabbar. It may seem very impressive. But in reality, it's mutabbar. Qala, he said, Musa alayhi salam said to the Bani Israel, أَغَيْرَ اللَّهِ أَبْغِيكُمْ إِلَهًا. Should I seek other than Allah as a God? For who? أَبْغِيكُمْ, for you. Meaning, should I demand for you, should I seek for you a God other than Allah, whom you would worship? وَهُوَ, while He is the one who فَضَّلَكُمْ عَلَى الْعَالَمِينَ. He is the one who gave you preference over the world. Meaning over the creatures of the entire earth, over the men and jinn of this time. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has chosen you, He gave you preference. There are two types of preferences. That someone is given preference because of lineage, because of whose children they are, because of which family they belong to. The second type of preference is to prefer someone because of the kind of work they do, because of the responsibility they have been given, because of the skill that they have, because of the work that they have been given. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala had chosen the Bani Israel not only because of their lineage, but mainly because of the responsibility that had been given to them. And what was that responsibility? That they must worship Allah and also spread this message to other people. Over here, Musa alayhi salam is telling them, Allah is the one who chose you. Allah chose you. And you want to serve other than Allah? This is ingratitude. Allah has chosen you, He has selected you for a specific task, and you want to leave that, you want to leave Allah, and you want to go serve others? What do we learn from this ayah? First of all, that shirk is the greatest form of ingratitude. Because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is the one who has given us everything that we have. And if we choose other than Allah, then what does that mean? Ingratitude. And that is shirk. Secondly, we also learn from this ayah that when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has chosen someone, when He has selected someone for something, by giving him a specific skill or a quality that He has not bestowed on others, then what should a person do? He should use that skill, he should use that ability for who? For whose sake? For the sake of Allah. Not for the sake of other than Allah. And each person, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given him something special. Each person has been given something special. And each person, if you ask them, so what are you good at? One person might say, I'm good at writing. Another person might say, I'm good at art. Another person might say, I'm good at fashion. I'm good at this, I'm good at that. Every person has been given some skill that perhaps others around him do not have. Who gave him that skill? Who gave him that ability? Who gave him that talent? Allah gave him. And if Allah has given you this talent, Allah chose you for this, you want to use it for other than Allah? This is ingratitude. This is not fair. So anything that Allah has given us, what should we use it for? To serve the deen of Allah, to please Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Then we also learn from this that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala had chosen the Bani Israel. He had selected them to be leaders. To be leaders, not followers. And what did the Bani Israel want? They wanted to become followers. But Musa alayhi salam says, Allah has chosen you. You are supposed to be leaders and you want to imitate other nations? And what is the state of the Muslim Ummah today? What is our state today? We forget the fact that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has chosen us with the same responsibility that كُنْتُمْ خَيْرَ أُمَّةٍ أُخْرِجَتْ لِلنَّاسِ تَأْمُرُونَ بِالْمَعْرُوفِ وَتَنْهَوْنَ عَنِ الْمُنْكَرِ. Instead of doing that, what do? We start following, we start imitating others.